Good evening. It is Sunday, July 20th, 2025. This is Debbie Davis. So I got a new backdrop here. I think it's gorgeous. It's an eagle with a flag and a cross on the bottom. So I hope you enjoy that. I love it. So I hope you can see it. So I just wanted to do a video today reading some more of this book that I've been reading, the Hirem Key. Okay, this is these guys that are addressing the true roots of the Freemasons. And I'm learning a lot from this book, and I wanted to share a few more things from it that I've learned. But it's not just the temple, it's not just the Masons, that are the issue in our government, and I realize that. There's more to the story. It's not just the Masons, it's CIA, it's the Bilderberg group. I mean, I do know it's more than that. But I want to read a little bit more here because this is a good book, though. And so, the original Knights Templars. It goes into the real history of the original Knights Templars, and they apparently reigned for a good 200 years. So it was like 1100 to 1300, and they acquired great wealth. They were known as brave crusaders, and they had legendary fighting abilities and fabulous treasures. Okay, the treasures that they acquired was because of the hard work that they did to excavate Herod's temple, King Herod's temple. Okay, and it started out with just 9 Templars, just 9 people, and then it grew to about 300, or maybe more. I don't know. I don't know how many total, but sometime. Okay, so they originally were there to help protect the pilgrims on their coastal journeys between Port of Jaffa and Jerusalem. So I personally believe they were protecting a bloodline, the royal bloodline and the royal relics. Okay, and it's just hard to find the truth because everything is such a cover-up. So they're doing their best to try to find the truth. I'm doing my best to decipher it, what they're saying. So apparently in 1818, 9 knights apparently arrived from France and became the first Knights Templars from France. So and remember, that's where Mary Magdalene, that's where she had she had her church in the south of France. So she probably sent them. That church probably sent them. That's my guess. So the earliest evidence of the Templars dates from 1121, when a certain Count Fulk the Fifth of Anjou lodged with Templars. Okay. So it doesn't, it's not very clear exactly what they were doing, but they were apparently protecting people on their coastal port to Jerusalem. Okay, that's basically all we know, Apparently they were carrying out research in an area in order to obtain certain relics, manuscripts, which contain secret traditions of Judaism and ancient Egypt that goes back to the date of Moses. Okay. Christian relics, basically. And so they had the mildness of monks and the valor of a knight, is what it says. Okay. Okay. They came with nothing, basically, and they came back after so many years with ruling the society, basically, with money, prestigious objects, wealth, with no less than 300 recruits. Okay, maybe that's where they get that movie. That movie 300. Remember that movie? Because there was 300 Templars, I guess. Okay. Certainly. Okay. Okay. They were they were never allowed to retreat unless the odds against them were 3 to 1. Okay. They were very feared and respected fighters. Um, they developed a French rule to replace the former one in a working language of the members of the order. Um, okay, so okay, they were apparently outside the Vatican law. Now I don't know how they did that, but that's apparently when they created their own rule. So the Pope didn't like that, and eventually the Pope was part of getting them, making those claims against them. They eventually were murdered in 1307 for claims of heresy, and it was the Pope and the King of France, because they apparently because they created their own French rule. So that probably ticked off some people, and they were outside the Vatican law. So that probably ticked off the Pope. Okay, so it ticked off the French president and the Pope, because they created their own rule. Their original Latin rule of the Templars began. Okay, then they were a French rule to replace the former one with a working language of the members of the order. This new rule contained several significant changes, but intriguingly, it still made no mention of the protection. Okay, well, it wasn't clear exactly what they were, what this rule was in here, but but apparently it was okay. In the translated and amended French rule, it says, "We command you to go where excommunicated knights are gathered." This can only imply that they were outside Vatican law, because they were excommunicated knights. They considered themselves excommunicated knights. Therefore, they were outside Vatican law. That's interesting. Okay. Eventually, the Templars' luck ran out after 200 years, and the Pope and King Philip, King of France, moved in an errant order, bringing them to their knees on one terrible day, Friday the 13th, 1307, October 1307. Since this day, the number 13 and Unlucky Friday has become a date superstition people ever since, the Friday the 13th, those movies were Friday the 13th, that they were all like horror movies. It all goes back to this date. It was considered superstitious and ominous for all of these years since the 1300s because of what happened to the Templars. I mean, so if it's still talked about today, then clearly something bad happened on that day. So they must have been good guys, protecting the good things. If it's still to this day considered an ominous day, then they weren't bad guys. They were good guys, and then something ominous happened to them. Clearly, So, okay. Then we talk about the next chapter talks about the Gnostics. These are the Gnostic books that were removed from the Bible by different kings and over time and different things like that. And then they found more secrets in there. They did some research into the connections of the Freemasons going back to the Gnostic Gospels. These were some of the Gospels that were removed from the Bible. And they found some connections between the Gospel of Thomas. Okay, so yeah, right here. Gnosis means knowledge or understanding. Okay. So yeah, they talk about there's a section in the Gospel of Thomas that finally ended up in the hands of Professor Quispel of the King Foundation of Zurich. And this, let's see. This had been suppressed. Okay. They were trying to suppress the ideas in the Gospel of Thomas for centuries. And it talked about the theological structure, and I guess there were some links to some things there. It's not clear exactly, but oh yeah, here it is. Here was the thing. In the Gospel of Thomas, we found a sentence which corresponds directly with the basis of the Mark Masons, a certain ritual in the Masonic lodges, but it's the opposite in the Masonic lodges. Okay, Jesus is the cornerstone, and they turned it around into the Masons are the cornerstone. Okay, Jesus said, "Show me the stone which the builders have rejected. That one is the cornerstone." Okay, and apparently there's a ritual in the Masonic thing that's like the opposite. They think they're the cornerstone. Okay, so Jesus said unto them, Did you never read in the scriptures, the stone which the builders rejected, the same is become the head of the corner? This is the Lord's doing, and it was marveled in our eyes. Matthew 21:4. Okay. It's in the Gospel of Thomas. Okay, and it's an exact parallel of the ritual of the Masonic Masonry degrees that seem to indicate the connection between Freemasonry and Gnosticism. Okay, so apparently I don't know what the exact ritual of the Mason ritual says, but it's like an epitome of the northeast corner, which figures in the Masonic first degree ritual. Okay, but he says something about rejecting, that the builders have rejected. So I'm thinking maybe they're something the opposite of what Jesus said, or so that was that connection there. And then we go on to, okay, and then there's, in this one, they were like, I mean, there was all of these different religions prior to Jesus that had that were okay. I can only guess that this was the work of Satan before, and Lilith before Jesus was ever born, because the whole goal of Satan and Lilith are to discredit the real Christ and all of their other religions, to pull you away from Christ. So there was these all these other stories of people that had similar they say that their mother was a virgin as well, like Gautama Buddha, born of Virgin Maya around 600 BC. Okay, Dionysus, Greek god, born of a virgin in a stable, turned water into wine. It's like, okay, I didn't even know any of these were, is that true, or are these just myths? I don't know. Okay, Adonis, Babylonian god, born of the virgin Ishtar. Well, we know Ishtar is also Lilith. Okay, Krishna, Hindu deity, born of the virgin Devaki. Then we have Mithra, which is born in a virgin in a stable on December 25th, around 600 BC. His resurrection was celebrated at Easter. So it's like it's like they've been trying to. The whole goal was to try to discredit when the real Christ came. So people would be so confused when the real Christ came that they wouldn't actually believe it. Isn't that what religion is trying to do still today? Is trying to discredit and make you so confused you don't know which way to go. That's what they were trying to do for all these centuries. And who knows if these are even true stories. They're probably just myths. So, but the name Yahweh itself means the one that will bring victory. Okay. Victory to his people at the Battle of Jericho. Okay. Joshua was just a similar name of Yahweh. Delivered victory to his people at the Battle of Jericho when the walls of the city were brought down by trumpet blasts. And he went, he had the people walk around 7 times with trumpet blasts, and all the walls came down of the entire, the stone walls came down of the city of Jericho. It was a miracle. So that was Joshua did that. Okay. When you add so the name Jesus, and then Messiah means bringer of salvation. Okay. So Jesus it means, Jesus Christ basically means victory and salvation. The name itself. Okay? And a person that will become rightful king of the Jews is, okay, that's what his actual name means. Okay. So, okay, how far did I get here? So I wanted to just, this is important things in these books. They don't teach us anymore. And like I said in one of my other videos, Jesus was always fighting with the Pharisees because the Pharisees were always all about the law, and they were historical hypocrites, and all about the law, and Jesus was more about love, loving the people, and they were rude, and they were all about the law, and extremely hard on people. Okay, and Jesus was more about loving people. Okay, so he was, always in arguments with them, and a lot of the rules that they made themselves. They were man-made rules instead of following God's rules, because of Jesus knew the real rule, and they had made up a bunch of religious man-made rules, so and we still have that going on today, where they're not in alignment. Some of these rules are not in alignment with what it says in the scriptures and things like that. So that's what's confusing people, because it's too strict, and it's like, oh, this is so fun, oh yeah, it's really fun to follow these strict rules of the church. It goes back to these Pharisees and Sadducees. They were the same way. They were boorish, rude, and extremely hard on people when they broke the laws of the church. And Jesus was more about loving people and having fun. And he wasn't like that, so okay. So then they talk about the Essenes. Now the Essenes were of the bloodline of Jacob, I believe. And I mean the Abrahamic Jacob bloodline. They were Qumran Essenes. Qumran was apparently the original church of Jerusalem. Okay. Okay, so the Essenes was attained only through individual adult choice, not by virtue of birth, like some other people. You have to be in your certain position through birth or whatever, like a king or a queen. No, with the Essenes, it's like now you can make a choice as an adult to become a Christian. And that was what it was with the Essenes. You can make it a choice as an adult, not by your birthright or your, but by your virtue, okay, to be an Essene, and then, you work your way in and have the teaching and custodians of the true religious teaching of Israel, known in the scrolls as the teacher of righteousness, and they established a new covenant. Okay, and apparently, you don't hear much about Jesus' brothers, but apparently Jesus had brothers, James and Just, and apparently they were part of the Qumran church community. And it was the first bishop of Jerusalem, brother of Jesus, who was the first bishop of Jerusalem. Okay, you never hear about this stuff. Okay. And so, for 3 decades of its existence, the Qumran church community was the Jerusalem church. Okay. So, you don't hear anything about that. Okay, so and then, when it says when people, you hear people say, "Be in the world but not of the world," it means, okay, so that kind of explains it here. It says, "Those not of the world included Jesus and his followers who believed in him. They lived on the earth. They were not in heaven, but they were not the heathen either. They belonged to the church, in contrast to the world." The world, what they mean by the world is just people who choose not to believe in him. Okay, that's all. And when you choose to believe in Christ, then you're part of the kingdom of the church. Okay, or the kingdom of God. Okay, so I think somebody's watching a movie or something over there. Okay, there was about 4,000 Essenes. Queen Boudica was an Essene. Queen Boudica was from Ireland, and she was an Essene. Okay, so I think that's about where I got so far that I wanted. I mean, because these are important things, but I mean, I'm reading some more things that are not just about the Freemasons, some other stuff too. So I just wanted to read that tonight and just show my new backdrop here, and well, at least there's some truths coming out here about the CIA. I mean, some things coming forward now about the Russian hoax that the CIA put together and as a conspiracy to try to discredit and invalidate the Trump years ago. I mean, so at least that's coming out. Okay. Okay. Then I just watched this movie last night, and it came out in 2010. I watched it before, but I just watched it again, and that was called The Green Zone, and it was based on. Well, they said it's based on this other book, but it was exactly like the book that I read while I was deployed in Iraq in 2008, I was in Camp Uka and Camp Liberty. And it was just like this book I read there called Chasing Ghosts by Lieutenant Paul Rykoff. And if you watch that movie, The Green Zone, I mean, he was Lieutenant Paul Rykoff was the first platoon in there, and they kept telling him that there was they send his troops out on these missions, looking for apparently weapons of mass destruction, and they were all over, and every single one of them came up as nothing there. So I mean, this is a smart guy, So he's, he starts doing some of his own research outside of his command, and also became friends with some of the Iraqi people and things like that. And he finds out that this is like just completely bad intel, and that just this whole thing and this whole deployment is just based on bad intel. And he really, really shook the feathers of all of Washington, because then he, told his story to this journalist, and she reported it and all kind of stuff. I mean, like, the whole deployment was based on bad intel, and and that's all the CIA. So it makes you wonder why we ever even went in there to begin with, and if it was all bad intel from the CIA. That's why I've talked about the CIA in many of my videos. I do not trust the CIA, and I believe that our own government had an ulterior agenda in Libya as well. When there was that that attack on the embassy, that was, they were probably finding out that our own government there was for their government, meaning the CIA, not the people. That I believe that the people were in Libya were finding out that, that we had ulterior agenda, our government, to kill the president and then take all these resources, so that's why they attacked the U.S. embassy there. A bunch of people, they wanted us out of there because I think the Libyan people found out that, this wasn't any kind of a good agenda that we were over there for. It's the same thing. It's this same agency, this horrible agency that we have to acknowledge as, treasonous. This is a treasonous agency that's committed treason against us, and they have to be the whole law of where they have some kind of power over all these other agencies, and that has to be rescinded. Like I said, the National Securities Act, because they are a treasonous agency that has done nothing but they've done so much damage, not only in our country but all over the world. This agency is so dangerous and so corrupt that it has to be addressed, Okay, so with that, I'll end for tonight. Okay, God bless.